Training camp just started. We've already got player movement. We've got injuries. We've got contracts being signed. Stick around while we pour one out for Treylon Burks. God rest his soul. It's time for Fantasy Whiplash right now. Welcome, everybody, to Fantasy Whiplash. It is the 29th of July, and I've got a special guest with me. This is Colton Dodgson from Footballguys. Colton, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm just happy to be here. Last second call up. I'll take it. Happy to be here with you. It's going to be a lot of fun. I got to say, with that Treylon Burks stuff you mentioned in the beginning, as a Birds fan, I reflect fondly on that trade, but
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, it's still a bummer how that all shook out. Let's see, maybe he'll land somewhere, maybe he'll figure something out, but it couldn't have gone much worse for the Titans.
Yeah, somebody said earlier today, like, hey, Tennessee, look on the bright side, at least you don't have to pay AJ Brown.
Yeah, that's really the only silver lining, I would think. So
I guess so. What do you got going on right now? Why don't you tell the people where to find you and what you're doing?
Yeah, man, like you mentioned, I'm over at Footballguys. I'll be producing content throughout the whole regular season. I also produce a podcast / video podcast 3 days a week called Scramble Drill with Colton Dodgson. You can find that on any of the podcast platforms, YouTube, under the same name. So that's what I spend a lot of time doing. And then I'll be chipping in wherever I'm needed. A last second host fill in, whatever. I'll take it, man. So, but that's where I'll more permanently be is content with Footballguys and then Scramble Drill.
Right on. I love Footballguys. I love everybody over there. They're great. Really good people and been doing it a long time. Way before I was a writer or an analyst, I used to use their Draft Dominator app. I mean, we're talking like, I don't know, almost 20 years ago now, I think.
I was going to say definitely before my time too.
Yeah, and actually it was, before they were even really that huge, I was part of their street team. And they sent me like business cards and like a Footballguys polo.
That's awesome, man.
Honestly, I was young and drunk all the time, so I didn't do nearly the stuff that I should have done, but the polo was fantastic.
Yeah, there you go. I was going to say that polo is probably nice. And hey, we've all been there before, the young and drunk thing. It's all good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Fond memories. Well, we got a lot of, it was a pretty hefty news week there at the end. Started off kind of slow. Anybody that was with us last week know that Joe and I had a jam-packed show of news. I mean, we went for, I think, a $1.45 last week because we're like, give the people what they want.
Yeah, and there was so much, man. The training camp is just like every second there's something new coming out. You're like, all right, I get to exhale a little bit. Nope, here comes an Isaiah Likely ankle, and we'll get to that. But it's just like every 2 seconds there's something else coming out.
Yeah, and Goodell's probably ecstatic because he's the one that wants NFL to be a year-round thing. Like it used to be, people kind of snoozed through training camp except for the super diehards.
Yeah.
And now it's just like news, hold out, injury, whatever.
Yeah. No, I can't believe the Hall of Fame game is this week. I mentioned it earlier. You get so excited because you've been starved for football. And this one might actually be a little better, right? Some of the players that Harbaugh was mentioning we'll see some run in that game. It was like Omarion Hampton, Trey Harris, guys that like we want to see play, right? So I think this Hall of Fame game is going to be a little more interesting. At least I think, and when I say that, I mean maybe we'll get 3 interesting drives instead of like maybe 1. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
in any case, man, it's football. I'll take it.
Don't look a gift horse in the mouth, Colton, because three decent drives would be great.
I was going to say that might be optimistic.
Shout out! It's ladies' night here on Fantasy Whiplash. We've got Amanda in the chat. Hi, Amanda. That is my significant other and far, far better half, as well as my bestie, Angie, from the Expo. And I will see you next weekend, Angie. So thanks, guys, for stopping by. And hopefully we'll get some more people trickling in like they usually do by the end. But with that said, why don't we just get into whatever the news of the day is. Might as well start off with what I think is the biggest one this week, because we covered Rashee Rice and Addison last week and stuff like that. But Joe Mixon was placed on the NFI list. He had an off-season ankle injury, which is new for him because he's very familiar with the in-season variety. Mm-hmm. So he's on the NFI list. They're really not sure how long it's going to be. So there's questions about whether he'd be even ready for week 1 when it's time to kick the season off. But anybody that's followed Joe for a long time, of course I have, being a Cincinnati fan, knows that not only does he always have an ankle problem, but it always takes him a while to come back from. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's problematic. I actually went in and moved him down quite a bit in my redraft rankings. He's at RB 29 for me, just because he's now at a point in his career where he just turned 29, right? And you look at you don't want to put too much into like the age cliff or things like that because guys can certainly defy that. But then you go back and look at his touch numbers from the last 4 seasons. He hasn't put together fewer than 270 touches in the last 4 years. So you're looking at a ton of volume, right? And you're looking at, you kind of outlined it, 7 meaningful injuries in 7 years, right? And now we're looking at an ankle that he has continued to have issues with. How far does that linger? We don't even know if he's going to be back in time for week 1. So this could very well be a headache that I'm willing to take other risks ahead of Mixon just because of like what this injury could entail in terms of it lingering. And I think it's you look at what the Texans have too, right? And Nick Chubb has to turn back the clock in a big way for this to be like a situation where they're like, oh, okay. Because I don't know if Woody Marks is necessarily ready to be a 3-down guy, like they just don't have that much depth behind him. And you're looking at a situation where this could not only be problematic for fantasy, but problematic for the Texans. And then you factor in the offensive line and kind of what they're trying to do there, where they're like retooling it while also trying to stay competitive. And this is just a recipe for a situation that I want to stay far away from. And that's why I'm way lower on Joe Mixon after this news.
Yeah, and when you consider the year that he had last year, I mean, he was key to everything the Texans were doing. I mean, he looked rejuvenated out there. So that is certainly going to hurt their game plans a lot. Nick Chubb looked so bad last year coming back. I mean, I think he was averaging like high 2s per carry, and was basically just kind of a goal line guy. And I think the Browns only brought him back because they love him in Cleveland.
Right.
Because I don't think there's a lot of other teams in their right mind that would have brought him back in.
And then you have the D'Amico Ryan stuff where he's like, yeah, how's somebody asks him how's Nick Chubb doing or whatever the question was, and his answer is to immediately point out that he's old, and it's like I don't know if that's really a ringing endorsement for turning back the clock next season. That's a little worrisome, but
at the same time, somebody's got to say it because I mean, for years, it's just been like Nick Chubb could do no wrong. You know what I mean? Like he's got a busted up leg, and they're like, but he's squatting 400 pounds. And I'm like, well, that's great. That doesn't help him cut on the football field.
Yeah, the injuries have been unfortunate, and it seems like that's just gonna like accelerate the running back sort of I guess the running back cliff, so to speak. And I wouldn't be shocked if it's just there's not anything left there. But at the same time with Nick Chubb, it's like he could go out there and have a great first 3 weeks, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess this really is still Nick Chubb. I don't anticipate that happening. I'm with you. I think he didn't show a whole lot last year, but he's just one of those guys where it's like he's defied so much, maybe it catches up to him, but he's been a great story to this point.
Yeah, I guess so. I'd be beside myself.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm with you. I just want to be the guy
here, man.
I just want to be the guy on record that said, "Hey, it could happen,"
Right. Yeah, I agree with you on Woody Marks. I really liked him in school. But I just don't know if he's a 3-down pro back. I guess maybe forced into it, we could find out something that we don't really know. But his metrics weren't all that impressive. And, he put up good numbers in college, but everybody in the pros now just put up good numbers in college. So
yeah, especially this class too, man.
I'm drafting best ball teams in the charity leagues because it's charity season right now. And I actually tinkered with the idea of picking up Dameon Pierce in one of them, like at the very, very end of the draft. Like I was like, somebody has to run the ball. He had one game last year. I mean, it was week 18. They were resting a bunch of their starters. He ran for like 179 yards.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like I remember him having a long touchdown or at least a long run in that game. And it was like, oh, yeah, Dameon Pierce. And you're right, man. Like you go down the list and it's like Nick Chubb could very well be this could very well be it, right? And then Woody Marks projects in the early portion of his career projects most favorably as like a 3rd down pass catching specialist, right?
Sure.
So, I mean, the Dameon Pierce route, it wouldn't shock me if the Mixon injury lingers for a while and Pierce is dealing with, his own injuries and things like that. But if that lingers and things break the right way for Pierce, could he be their guy that they're forced to utilize like early in the season?
I don't think it's crazy. I'm almost worried that he will, because then it's going to lead me to like picking up guys like Miles Sanders during the season. Maybe he's got the Pierce thing where he's going to come back from nothing.
Yeah, I do think, I'm not a huge Javonte Williams guy. The metrics weren't great last year, but Sanders is in a very similar spot. You look at his metrics last year, and there were some parallels between kind of like the progression that him and Javonte Williams have sort of been on in terms of like trending downward. And then Phil Maffa, there's been a lot of buzz about him in training camp and Jaden Blue too. So if we're looking at the Cowboys, I think the Cowboys have some depth that might actually, I don't think it's going to be top line depth. I don't think you're going to have a situation where any of those guys are immediately exceptional, but I do think that could be a slightly more crowded room. Whereas with the Texans, it's like, okay, who's left, right? It's like throw Pierce out there. Throw Pierce out there.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly, man. It's such an interesting.
DeMeco Ryans back there running the ball.
Yeah, he might suit back up, man. He might have to.
Let's stick with running backs here, because there was also a little bit of concern in Cleveland, which there always is, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Because Jerome Ford pulled up lame and with a hamstring issue. They at first were not sure about a timetable. It sounds like now they're still not quite sure about a timetable. He is back at practice, but he's primarily working with trainers on the side. And we know how temperamental hammies can be. So it could always strike back. I don't know. Do you think he was already headed for being the starter with Judkins gone, or do you think that was still up in the air?
I think with the situation in Cleveland, what we saw last year was a sort of uncharacteristically high passing rate. And it kind of had to be, right? They were down a ton. They didn't really have the luxury of running the ball last year. Then you get the Jameis Winston effect and all of that stuff there. But my big take, I guess, on Cleveland is and maybe the draft solidified this a little bit by taking 2 running backs, is they want to get back to a little more balance, right? And with Joe Flacco, they at least view him as a guy who is going to manage a game and keep them in games so they can get back to like the Kevin Stefanski type of offense, right? And we saw the pass rates get super high when Flacco took over in 23 as well, but
Well, he was
it's
also having
not
success.
right, exactly. And that was what they leaned on down the stretch. It got them to the playoffs, all of those things, right? So I think in this situation with the system and wanting to get back to the identity a little bit, Jerome Ford is kind of inevitable, right? I feel like we've written off Jerome Ford and then here he comes, right? Somehow he's getting meaningful carries and he shows some flash as like a kind of a home run back, a guy who can take a carry 60 yards for a touchdown, right? So that's exciting there. And I think the familiarity with this system would have to tell you. I mean, Samson was obviously gonna mix in and be involved too. So that's where I think he benefits a ton from Ford missing some time. And you said it, hamstrings are super temperamental, especially for an explosive guy like Ford, right? That could flare up on him, one cut, one burst, and then it's like, oh, okay, we're re-aggravating it, right? Like that could be a situation. So Samson getting in there and getting some run, I think puts them in a position where, okay, we can get this guy up to speed a little bit. Maybe this isn't like plan A, right? To run Samson out as the guy, but I think utilizing him and Ford kind of keeps them in a position where Ford can be useful as that home run hitter, one cut, he's gone type of guy, because that's what we've seen. And then you mix both of those guys in. So I think Samson is going to benefit from this quite a bit. I mean, anytime a rookie can get meaningful run in
right
training
now
camp,
right now he's like the only one there. I mean, they signed a running back just to have a camp body, not because the guy's actually going to make the team. But right now Samson's running with the ones.
That's big. That's big
because Ford's hurt and Judkins is beating somebody up somewhere. So what's interesting to me is that Samson, he didn't get a lot of opportunities to catch the ball in college. So I'm still a little curious about how good a pass catcher he is. I mean, I know it seems like it should be easy for somebody like that, but we've seen too many running backs. Tank Bigsby is a good example that just have cinder blocks for hands and can't catch a ball. So, considering Samson didn't run the ball much in college, my first instinct was to think that, Ford would be the starter, Samson would be the mix it up guy on third down. But I think it actually could be the reverse of that because Ford is quite accomplished pass catcher.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I was going to say too, especially with rookies, you don't want to put them in a position where they kind of have to grow on the job, so to speak, right? Like, you don't want to put too much on their plate if Samson is a and nor do I think coaches will, especially a coach in Kevin Stefanski's position the guys out there that you trust in the positions that they're going to be in. If Samson hasn't shown that juice yet, he could absolutely be an early down guy that they go to and utilize first, second downs. But that third down work with Jerome Ford as the pass catcher, I certainly think we can see that. And with his, like I mentioned earlier, his home run profile where he can take a catch or a one cut and turn it upfield for 60 yards, I think that projects favorably. So I agree with you on that. I think we could be looking at a situation where the more familiarity Samson gets as sort of the early down guy, you can utilize him and put that on his plate while the other parts of his game sort of develop. And then who knows what happens with Judkins, right? He's like such a big unknown here, and his presence, him coming back, like whenever he might, it's so tough to prognosticate what's going to happen there. But I think this Ford Samson leaning on these two and then getting Judkins back, that could give you a ton of depth at running back where you could get back to being a much more
very much so. Yeah. And I mean, I think we're in agreement that Ford and Samson are both going to be heavily involved without Judkins there.
For sure.
The question is, in what role? You know what I mean? How are they gonna manage it? Because you can't just like rotate them either, where like one is pass catching and then running the ball, and one's running the ball and then pass catching. But I think they're both going to be pretty heavily utilized. And if that's the case, if Ford comes back soon, I wouldn't be surprised if by the time people are drafting in late August, if their ADPs end up real close together. Just because everybody's like, so
dart throw, right?
You either pick which one you believe in or take them both. Take them both.
Yeah,
and it works out.
Yeah, if you're taking one, take the other.
With Cleveland players.
Yeah, I was gonna say if that's your strategy, more power to you, And if you're gonna roll the dice on the Cleveland backfield, just take them both and see, get a monopoly on the backfield and see what happens there.
Well, it's ballsy to say the least.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I have Ford slightly ahead of Samson. Sorry, I know we're probably moving on.
Do too. No, it's okay.
Yeah.
I do as well. He's the one that I've been, again, in best ball drafts, which are kind of, they're throwaway leagues, basically. But I've been targeting Ford until, the last couple of days, basically.
Yeah. I would say he's probably the spike.
Matter of fact, Angie in the chat, Ford got hurt. And she was, upset about it. And Mixon got hurt the same day, and I had him. So we were commiserating on which one of us was more screwed. And I told her I thought Ford would be back sooner than later anyway.
Yeah, I'm with you. They'll probably manage it. He seems to be the guy that, like I said, has the most familiarity there. He'll get the first run. He'll be the guy that they at least trust early in the season until, they kind of work those roles out. But I have Ford at my RB50. Samson is RB52 in redraft. I know you mentioned best ball too. I think Ford is definitely the spike guy out of those two. Like all you need is the 60-yard touchdown from Ford, which we've seen he can do from time to time. So couple that with some meaningful carries, I think there could be some juice there, especially in the early going.
Yeah, but you're right. They're definitely going to trust him first.
Yeah.
Let's. I mean, we're on a running back run. We might as well stick with them. But now we'll switch to a guy that's just got some of the worst luck, man. After missing most of last season, Marshawn Lloyd of the Packers pulled up lame. He went down with a non-contact injury. This actually occurred yesterday. And then I don't know if they were like looking at the tape overnight because they wanted to answer the questions, But like at like 6 o'clock this morning, they were like, yeah, it turns out the defender didn't even hit him. And I'm like, why do you have to tell us that? Like,
Yeah.
it's like
That's how you want to
normally an
start my day,
NFL
man.
team would not disclose that information.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Tough
so
way to
now
start the day.
so now he's got MRIs, he's got testing. He's got, the coaches are not optimistic supposedly. And meanwhile, LaFleur has been raving about Emmanuel Wilson, who did pretty well last year, raving about him in camp this season. So I don't think either one of them has a giant role because Jacobs never misses games. But yeah, I don't know. You got to feel bad for Lloyd, though, don't you?
Yeah, man, it's brutal. It was something he dealt with last year too. You wrote snake bit, and that's hit the nail on the head. It's like
Yeah.
how unlucky can you be, right? You don't even really get a chance to get out there and carve out a meaningful role, because I think there is, especially with how the Packers leaned on the run down the stretch last year. Obviously, there was talk of a Jordan Love injury, all of that stuff. But there is, and we saw Emmanuel Wilson last year. You mentioned him. He had 114 touches, right? 103 rushing attempts. Like, he was involved to an extent, and a lot of that was early in the year too. So there was a path to carving out a role in this offense that figures to be a little more balanced, right? Maybe Jordan Love is feeling a little better this year and they can do that. But it is such a bummer because I think he's a talented guy, and there was that was an interesting battle there between Lloyd and Wilson to see who could carve out those change-up duties behind Josh Jacobs. And then obviously, be in that sort of, if anything happens to the starter tier, and like the handcuffs, so to speak. So it is a bummer for sure.
Yeah, it is. I think you got to feel bad for him. And I know that almost every dynasty team I have feels bad for him because he is just spending all the time on my IR.
Yeah, he's on a few of my rosters too.
Multiple leagues.
I feel your pain, man.
Yeah. In the well, we can just gloss over this. In the Nobody Cares Bowl, Blake Corum faced Rashid Shaheed. Corum lost 6 pounds and says he feels so much faster. And Shaheed added 8 to 10 pounds, and he's much, much stronger. So you buying that?
It's that time of year, man. I'll say this about Corum. If Kyren Williams, the last 2 years have proven that if Kyren Williams is healthy, Sean McVay is content to just run this dude into the ground.
Oh, yeah.
He is going to get all of the run. I mean, and you say that, and then all of a sudden we get a 3-headed monster with Corum and Jarquez Hunter. I don't see that being the case. They also invested mid-round picks in these guys, so you'd think they want them to be involved. Until I see differently, this is going to be Kyren Williams' show with these guys mixing in as sort of like change-ups.
And it's almost like we're sitting around just waiting for Kyren Williams to get hurt again. And
that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Last year he was like, nope, not going to do it. He like pulled a James Conner and was like, fooled you.
Yeah. It's crazy because it has kind of been like waiting for the rug to be pulled out from under you with Kyren, because it feels like it's come out of nowhere, right? He had the run, I think it was in his second year, where in 12 games he was an RB1. He was awesome. He's been an RB1 for the last 2 seasons, right? But it hasn't come at like as a result of super efficient metrics or anything like that. It's coming to
last year I think he had 16 touchdowns. So
exactly. It's come as a result of absurd volume, right? And touchdown production. And if he's not getting either one of those things, this isn't a guy who's going to take limited opportunity and be overly efficient, right? And you're banking on 200, 300 touches, right? And then double-digit touchdowns. And for the last 2 years, he's pulled it off. So it is kind of like it's a shaky foundation. You do have 2 years of production, but it's also like, okay, how long can we keep this up? How long is Sean McVay going to just lean on him? And how long is he going to hold up? Because the volume over 2 seasons.
Yeah, I mean, is the clock going to strike midnight and he's going to turn into Todd Gurley? You know what I mean? Where he's just like, not only am I hurt for the rest of this year, but I'm done. Like I made my money. I scored my touchdowns. I'm taking my ball and going home.
Yeah, Gurley. I mean, with the knee and the knee issues with Gurley, that was brutal because that run
was really brutal.
That run he had, what was that, 2015, 16, something like that, his second or third year. Facing him in fantasy was like facing 2023 McCaffrey. It was like on the same tier where you just have to mark him up for 30 points. Like it was absurd, that Todd Gurley run. But there's a little departure for you. I'm reminiscing about the good old Todd Gurley days.
Right.
But yeah, Rashid. Sorry, I was just going to mention Rashid Shaheed too.
Please do.
I think he was a guy at in the beginning of last year, right before everybody on the Saints was just decimated. He's shown some juice for the last couple of years, right? He's a guy that it's like, okay, maybe this is a legitimate deep threat, stretch, put some pressure on the back on the secondary type guy. Now I just saw the Todd Gurley comment. Can the Saints passing attack, is there enough there to support a player like that consistently? You'd be putting a lot of faith in Tyler Shuck or Spencer Rattler to get the most out of these guys. So, I mean, I think Shaheed as a player is interesting. You're just banking on the rest of the team coming together around him. And shout out Kellen Moore too.
I'm not going to lie. You know, we all have those guys where we look past some of their misgivings just because we like the guy. And I felt for Shaheed hard last year to the point where I spent all offseason in dynasty leagues trading for him. I've been not reaching, but trying to draft him if he's, within my next couple range. Because I'm a sucker for that kind of thing, because this is a game. People forget it's a game. So yeah, I kind of fell for him. So, 8 to 10 pounds is more significant than 5 or 6. And if it's all muscle, then that's even more significant. But again, like you said, the problem is whoever is under center back there, that's who we're trusting to get them the ball. And you have to know that that's going to hurt efficiency big time.
Right. How many targets can this passing attack prop up, right? You have to figure Olave is, as long as he's on the field, he'll probably be heavily involved. I also think Juwan Johnson in a Kellen Moore system is really interesting. I know I saw that Shaheed is the JMO of Kenny Galladay's. That's a great comp. That is a great comp. Very on the nose there. But you go down the line and it's like, okay, I think Shaheed, unfortunately, because of the state of this passing game, unless Tyler Shuck or Spencer Rattler prove to be like, oh, okay, maybe this guy is their answer. I don't know. They did spend a second on Shuck. He's an older guy. Maybe he's a little more than we're giving him credit for. But it's still rolling the dice a little bit to see if this is an offense that can prop up 3 targets, and then beyond even Alvin Kamara out of the backfield, who's going to see some run too. I don't know if he'll see the same volume that he's seen in recent years, but he's somebody you have to consider too. So at what point are we like, can Rashid be that guy consistently, or is he going to be another spike week type of player, which I certainly think he can be.
Right. And is Olave going to fall down and get a headache on the other side? I don't know if that benefits Shaheed or hurts him, because he needs somebody like that pulling the coverage away.
Right.
or at the very least, the safety over the top. Um, but I like how everybody's like, well, now that what's his face is gone, Olave doesn't have all these hospital balls coming his way. And I'm
Yeah.
like, you mean the rookie and Spencer Rattler aren't going to throw hospital balls? Are you
Yeah,
kidding
man.
me?
I wouldn't bank on those being gone. We'll probably still see some hospital balls, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Hopefully fewer. I don't I guess that's the optimistic outlook is maybe Kellen Moore can scheme up fewer hospital balls. I don't think that's too much to ask for, but
right.
again, you're banking on a rookie and Spencer Rattler to potentially get you there. And it's dicey, man. It's a dicey proposition.
I mean, at the very least, you got to tell your pass catchers just, you know what? If it's even remotely too far, just don't even try for it
Yeah, make
because you're
make
going to get
make a
leveled.
business decision. Right, make a business decision.
Let's talk about a couple wide receivers, and then we're going to take a quick little siesta, um, and um, and talk about something the Podfather wants to talk about. Um, the Kansas City Chiefs in one day of practice. Um, Xavier Worthy left practice, which was later described as a bump on the head. I don't know if they're making light of it or not, but
Yeah, that could really be
um,
anything.
Hollywood Brown walked off ahead of the cart, or I think he eventually rode in the front of the cart with an apparent ankle injury. He rolled, I think, his foot and his ankle. Um, and it doesn't sound like that's a big deal, but this is Hollywood Brown we're talking about, who has had 13 injuries in 8 years and missed a lot of time because of those. And I mean, last year was a shoulder injury, but almost all of those 13 injuries were pedal ankle sprains. And they kept him out an extended period almost constantly. And then the really devastating one, I can barely bring myself to say it. Sky Moore
Ooh,
had to leave practice.
there's a
I
throwback.
think it might have been a hamstring. But what are they going to do without Sky Moore, Colton?
Oh, that passing attack takes a massive hit, and I speak in jest about Sky Moore, but this dude still haunts my dreams from that Super Bowl in 22 when Jonathan Gannon got scored on by the same play twice in the same game, and Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney were on the receiving
Oh,
ends of, of those touchdowns. We got the Chiefs back. That was good. It's fine. I guess it cushions the blow a little bit, but man, that was a brutal night. And that was the last time. 22 was the last time we really saw like a air it out type of offense with Mahomes, and we're gonna get. I mean, we're talking about the Chiefs receivers and things like that, but I guess the Matt Nagy and Andy Reid calls the plays and is like the architect of this offense, right? But the Matt Nagy addition has kind of correlated with this more fewer air yardage per attempt, fewer touchdown volume for Mahomes. It's more of an efficient passing attack, and maybe the receivers have something to do with that. And then you remember he threw for 40 touchdowns with Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney, right? Like,
right.
it's so
Yeah, I'm
you're
actually looking for a little bounce back from Mahomes this year. Number one, they think they deserve the Super Bowl every year, so obviously they have a chip on their shoulder.
yeah.
But with a pretty decent running attack, assuming Pacheco realizes his potential from 2 years ago. And the collection of receiving talent that they have. I even like Jalen Royals a lot, and I know they do too.
Yeah.
Because they Andy Reid said right at the very beginning that he can do a lot of the things that Rice can do and line up like Rice, and I was like, well, that's dangerous. So I kind of feel like Mahomes might look around and take a look at all his toys and be like, you know what, I'm gonna put the ball up this year more than last year.
I mean, it would certainly be nice. I am somebody, and I'm like racking my brain trying to, like, I want to hold this to scrutiny and I want to be like, oh, okay, I'm missing something. But I am really out on Travis Kelce this year. I think some of the regression that we've seen, and ultimately I'm going to bring this back around to Mahomes, because obviously Mahomes and Kelce are like, that is his guy. That's who he's going to look for. That's kind of the check down. And Kelce's the biggest thing that he brought to the table over those prime years was the yards after catch, right? And his ability.
Taylor Swift.
That too, right? That's been a big addition over the couple of years, right? We all love seeing her. But I was going to say the yards after catch and kind of what's happened with his ability not only to be nuanced in his route running and create separation and shake guys, but do so in a way where, when things break down, Mahomes is looking for that guy and he just doesn't have that space anymore. I think there's going to be a lot more pressure on the receivers to perform. And maybe that requires airing it out a little more and more air yardage per attempt, finding that downfield element a little more. I also think, though, Xavier Worthy is going to be a big piece of that. And he's not just – I did there's a little subtle plug, but I did a whole film study on him like a week or two ago, where I looked at some of his biggest games and just the way that he evolved over the year and like how he went from that deep threat who had 3 touches and 2 touchdowns in the season opener to like he had negative air yardage per attempt or per target, I should say, in that Steelers game, right? They were exclusively getting him the ball underneath or behind the line of scrimmage, and he became a manufactured target guy. I think he's going to be such a focal point in this offense, even when Rashee Rice comes back, right? So many people are making or focusing on the suspension. He's coming back from a major knee injury too. And we'll see, kind of what that looks like. But I think Worthy is going to be huge. You would hope Hollywood Brown can shake these nagging ankle injuries and whatever else he's dealing with, right? And then Rashee Rice, we'll see what happens there. Jalen Royals, that's a great poll as well, bringing him up. He's a guy that's being talked about constantly throughout training camp. Him and Brashard Smith, who I think might be interesting as a pass catcher out of the backfield too. But yeah, I that was a real long-winded way of talking about these receivers, but I think this is such a convoluted situation.
No, I agree. It totally is. And I still get stuck in the mode of thinking of Worthy as still being kind of boom and bust. He's lacking a little bit of consistency, but some of that is part of the offensive game plan too. It's not his inability to get open downfield. But he certainly is dangerous. And Hollywood Brown, I have, like, if this was another injury, it's going to keep him out 5 or 6 weeks. I have expect him to pull a Mike Williams and just be like, I know when I should just stop. This is ridiculous.
For sure. That's like that would be the out of left field thing, right? And you said it. We saw it with Mike Williams too. You never know with these guys. It's something, who knows? But I guess it wouldn't shock me either if it was like a nagging long-term thing.
Yeah, I agree completely. So I want to take a minute, and after we come back, We're going to talk maybe a little less about injuries and a little more about some personnel movement. But for right now, for anybody that's not involved in Fast Draft, which is the new best ball leagues that are really, really catching fire right now. You've got leagues where you draft rookies only. You draft 6, start 4 every week. You've got a flex 4 where you draft 6 and just start 4. And we just added the Rabbit, which is a full-size best ball league. And the whole idea is 20 or 30-second clocks. It goes by quick. If you're a member of the Discord, which is free, you can be on the Discord and get notifications. Like somebody will say, "Hey, we need 2 more for the Rabbit. Hey, I need 1 more for Origins." There's even a D-up one for IDP as well. So, but being that the Rabbit is fairly new, I feel like I should throw it to the Podfather. Let him tell you about this.
You asked me to deliver. Asked we delivered a full best ball tournament on Fast Draft, but we do it the Fast Draft way, and it's called the Rabbit because, of course, it is. 20-second time clock, 15 rounds. These drafts, they take 20 minutes. That's it. So you get a lot of new people coming in and playing, get a lot of best ball bros playing, exploitable ADPs, no rake. It is the best EV in all of fantasy. You should just go to fastdraft.app, use code FAST. You get a $50 deposit match. These things are a blast, and it's the best use of your funds in all of fantasy.
So there you have it. I will tag on a little bit on that. If you don't use the promo code FAST, you can also use promo code WHIP for this show, Fantasy Whiplash. And that'll get you a dollar for dollar match up to 50. The contests are pretty inexpensive. I mean, some of the rookie ones are $5 per contest. Some of the flex 4s are $10 or less. And the other cool thing is you can set up your rankings. You can make, for all intents and purposes, your cheat sheet. It's a drag and drop thing. Works really, really well. You can make all your rankings, and then you can select a turbo draft where you don't even have to go to the room. Like, you just put turbo draft, and when that contest fills, it drafts for you, whether there's live people or not in the room, and then sends you an email with who you ended up with based on your rankings. So it's a pretty cool deal, and the Rabbit is really popular right now, and there's also a free version of the Rabbit. So if you wanted to just try it out, you could, where $10 goes to Fantasy Cares every single time somebody drafts in the Rabbit. You see it right on the screen. It'll say the Rabbit is free, this one right here, for Fantasy Cares. So if you're not playing Fast Draft, I will warn you, it's pretty addictive. But it's a whole hell of a lot of fun if you like best ball, but you don't like having to wait around for a week on a slow draft. So have you tried it yet, Colton?
I have not. I've seen a lot of buzz about it, though. It's something I want to definitely try out. So, I mean, I'm sitting here watching the ads and listening to your pitch, and I'm like, you're selling me a little bit. So,
right
there you go, man. I might have to get in on it.
Yeah, it's a really good time. It is addictive. It's not too expensive. There's no rake from the house. It's it's all good stuff, and who knows, at the end of the season you might just get, I mean, like last year One of my friends entered a few of them. She didn't win outright on any of them, but finished like top 3 or something in several of them, and just got a check in the mail for $600.
Wow.
And she was like, "Well, I'll be."
I'll take it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm not complaining about that. You know,
especially right after Christmas when you get your credit card bill.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so go to Fast Draft, sign up, use promo code WHIP, and then make sure to join the Discord. That's going to tell you when a bunch of leagues are open. And Fast Draft Fridays, there's always a promo. And I mean, there's tons of people in the Discord. It's just contest after contest after contest after contest. So, all right. That's enough plugging of the Fast Draft. Guys sound like a commercial over here.
That's all right, man. Hey, that's what you had to do. You did it.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I gave the Podfather his screen time.
Yeah, there you go.
Which, is always good for the boss. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. So let's talk about a couple more things. Some training camp developments here. Jacory Croskey-Merritt, who's 24 years old and was drafted in the 7th round by the Commanders. I think a lot of people kind of thought it was a throwaway pick, but, everybody gets their day in the sun in draft season. So obviously some analysts were like, oh no, he's good. And he's been routinely working with the first team offense alongside Jaden Daniels, particularly on their 2 and 3 minute drills at the end of the game. I would assume it's mostly a pass catching role. I don't think he's going to usurp anybody, because if he was going to usurp somebody, it would be Eckler, and his dead cap value is $1.5 million, and that's also just what he's making this year. So,
yeah,
I mean, either way, they got to pay $1.5 million. The rest of his stuff is still incentives. He gets $150,000 for this, $250,000 for that, so on and so forth. But is Jacory Croskey-Merritt somebody you've looked at all or explored?
He's one of this rushing attack in general is one that I've been intrigued by, just because it doesn't seem like it's one where any one guy has sort of a stranglehold on like a lead back role in this offense, right? Brian Robinson has done well in the role, right? I don't think he's taken it and asserted himself as like, I am a no doubt RB1 type player. I think he's very much like a lead back that they can lean on in short yardage situations. And then you mentioned Eckler. It doesn't, given the fact that his dead cap is only 1.5, it doesn't really seem like that's a guy they're going to be moving off of. But those two are specialists in their respective roles, and they've played them pretty well, right? This team went to the NFC Championship last year. Like they figured out how to use those guys. And then I think an underrated player in this whole running back discussion is Deebo Samuel, in the way that he has been utilized as a back or as a receiver and back in a backfield alignment. He's kind of done a little bit of everything, but utilizing him out of that.
Great success with that in San Francisco, especially
100%.
on screen balls or swing passes.
And that's what Cliff Kingsbury loves, man. That low A dot, get the ball in the receiver's hands and let them make a play. That's why the Deebo Samuel addition for me is like, oh, okay, he kind of fits what Cliff Kingsbury really wants to do, right, in this offense, with the screens and the things like that you mentioned. So I wouldn't be shocked if you penciled Deebo Samuel in for a couple carries a game too, as long as he holds up, as long as he can handle that at this point in his career. He might also be a guy who mixes in that conversation. So I do think this is a backfield. While I don't think there is a lead guy who has made it known that this is his job, I do think this is a backfield predicated on guys who play their respective roles and play them well. I went back and looked at Croskey-Merritt's usage as a receiver in college. He was only targeted 45 times in 6 college seasons. So
Wow.
he hasn't had a ton of run as a receiver. That's not to say he can't do it, right? These
Right.
guys,
Yeah.
they're absurd athletes, right? It's just not something he's necessarily been asked to do. So when you're looking at that and you're looking, okay, where does he sort of fit into this whole equation? Maybe on early down stuff and working with the first team in the 2 to 3 minute offenses, that bodes well for him too. Maybe that's what they're trying to do is get him ready to be a little more well-rounded and work him in at a certain point. I would just think this is a situation where early in his career, he's probably pushing for some Brian Robinson reps, but I would think Deebo Samuel is also pushing for some Brian Robinson reps, and Deebo Samuel will mix in the Austin Eckler role sometimes. It just seems like a spread out approach to the backfield where everybody plays their role pretty well. And that's where I'm like, okay, where is he going to find that time? And that's why I think he might be more of a long-term play unless something changes dramatically and he has like an absurd preseason and he's so good that they can't ignore him, right? That's
and
kind of where I'm
I
at.
agree with that because, when I said that about Eckler's dead cap, that's for this season. I believe
Right.
at the end of the season, he is a free agent. So it could be a long-term play where they're getting him ready for that situation. I just find it so interesting, not just that you've got these guys that can all play, their roles really well, that they do the thing that they do really well, but they can all catch passes. So
Yeah.
I think it's really funny that a 7th round pick is running with the first team.
Yeah, man. That was interesting too. And it's one of those things also where the film can say something completely different than the numbers, right? The numbers would tell you he only had 45 targets in 6 seasons, but maybe the tape is showing you that he has the tools to excel as a receiver. He just hasn't necessarily been asked to do that at any point. So that could certainly be a possibility too. And we'll kind of see how that develops. Right now, I just think like, okay, I'm trying to figure out kind of where he could slot in. And I think it's going to be an all hands on deck sort of backfield for all of the guys ahead of him, if that makes sense.
Well, and in a worst case scenario, if he's having that kind of run in practices, I mean, you can do a lot worse than having 3 really good, really solid at what they do running backs back there. But I do tend to agree with you that this is probably a longer term play. Like they're going to get us all hyped up about it now, and then we're not going to see him very often during the season.
It seems to happen like that.
Anything could happen. I did not think in 2025 we'd still be talking about Austin Eckler the way his injuries were going. And meanwhile, he's still returning kicks. And I'm like,
man.
I don't even know how he runs that fast anymore while he's pulling his oxygen tank.
Yeah, man. Pound for pound, though, right? That was his old nickname. He's just he maximizes everything about his profile, and that's how he had to stick around, right? He was an undrafted guy who has made a really nice, not only a really nice NFL career, but a really nice fantasy football career out of a very limited opportunity. And he's done so as a guy who does a little bit of everything. So I wouldn't be shocked if the coaches are like, Austin, you have to stop returning kicks. And he's like, absolutely not. You will drag me off this field. I'm not giving up kick return duties. So he just seems like that type of guy.
Yeah, and he's a great leader too. He's probably excellent in the locker room. Maybe not as fiery, but a little, he'll lift people up and get people to get going without just screaming, "Come the fuck on." You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. It's wild that team, and I'm sure a lot of the culture stuff stemmed from ownership for a long time, but that's become a team that had like you wouldn't necessarily point to the Commanders as like the shining example of, like a culture team, right? And
Right.
now you look at what Dan Quinn has done with that team, and it's like they've really turned it around. That's a team that you look at and you're like, oh, they've got obviously everybody makes jokes about now that they signed Von Miller, the nursing home defense, right? But like that's all leadership.
Well, I was
leadership.
about to say, a lot of their team is old. You know what I mean? They're one of the older teams in the NFL. Maybe it's just that those guys all got tired of losing, and and finally we're like, all right, let's all come together here because I'm not going out like this.
For sure. And having the star quarterback on a rookie deal certainly does not hurt. You have the money to sign a bunch of 1-year deals. Bring these guys in. Let's gear up for a run. And then, by the time we have to pay Jaden Daniels, it's not – maybe we stop investing in 35-year-old pass rushers. But until that point, Von Miller, come on in, that sort of thing. So
right. I was going to say something about Terry McLaurin. He did show up at camp today, but let's stick in that same sort of age group, I think. And that's that Courtland Sutton just pulled down 4 years, $92 million. That's a lot of money for a 29-year-old dude. Yeah. He turns 30 in October, so most assuredly he's finishing his career as a Denver Bronco, which is cool. You rarely see that sort of thing. But my question is, was that a wise choice by them? Is that really good for their young quarterback?
I think you look at really any extension. When you look at any extension that gets done, I think there are a couple of variables you have to consider, right? It's one, we need to take care of our guys, right? I think that goes such a long way when you talk about reputation with free agents, reputation around the league, like giving not, and he's a guy who deserves it. You're not just handing money out. This is a guy who was your alpha wide receiver 1 last year in this offense, and he did exactly what you needed him to do and played that role exceptionally. And he's been a guy that I've liked for a long time, right? He had the knee injury early in his career, 2020, I think that was. And he came back and put together a real nice NFL career. I think he's a really underrated top wide receiver in the NFL. He does a lot of things well. And when you look at relative value, he didn't want to reset the market. I think he was very aware of like, okay, a lot of these guys, I'm trying to think of extensions, the Jamar Chase extension or like the AJ Brown extension or just recent extensions that have gotten done. He's aware of the fact that like, okay, I'm probably going to take slightly less than that. He's not trying to reset the market.
Well, and these are guys that are still going to play for another like 15 years. He's like, this is my last contract. And they were like, 100%. We're going to make you feel good about it.
And that awareness, though, on the part of the player is where you're like, okay, this is a situation where all around there is mutual respect from the player to the team, from the team to the player. He's a part of an ascending offense. I really like the Broncos offense this year. I think they addressed a lot of the stuff that they struggled with last year. And he wants to be a part of that. He got paid. You said it. That's a lot of money. And then the time too, the 4 years, I'm sure it's structured in such a way that it's a little more front loaded. I don't have that in front of me, but I would assume.
Yeah, I don't either. I imagine he might not finish all 4 years there.
Yeah.
But I think if he doesn't, he's going home.
Right.
I don't think he's gonna, be waiting around trying to get another team to sign him so you can be a role player or possibly get cut or anything. I mean, there's something to be said for, whatever legacy you want to leave behind. And I think retiring as a Bronco, considering it's his best years.
Right. And
is really, really favorable for him, and they're doing right by him, like you said.
For sure. And I think that's big for Knicks. I also think the Terry McLaurin element to this is interesting too, because how does this deal now affect McLaurin and affect the Commanders and all of those things? Because McLaurin is asking for, based on what I was seeing, significantly more than this Courtland Sutton deal.
Right.
So,
well, I think McLaurin, in his defense, I will say I think McLaurin's been underpaid for quite a while. So I think he's finally like, you owe me, man. Like, I've been busting my hump, and I know that's not how the business works, but
he has a point.
He did show up to camp, so he's not coughing up checks, and also that's a show of good faith. That you think something's going the right way. It's the same thing in it's not fantasy related, but in Cincinnati, Hendrickson is going to report on time. And that kind of stuff makes ownership take note and say, okay, he's not a dick. Like, we should probably really talk about this. So,
yeah.
What was I was going to say something else about Sutton. Oh, it was 2 years ago, not last year, but the season before, 23. When he had, 13 touchdowns. And I didn't think he was that alpha male receiver. I just thought that the numbers looked good because he had these TDs, and that pushed him up the fantasy rankings. And then last year he put up the same amount of TDs again and looked really good doing it. And I was like, I was wrong. I don't usually say I'm wrong very often.
Hey man, it's healthy to do that, right? The self-awareness is important. Yeah, man. There's nothing wrong with that. It's good. It's good for you. We're all wrong sometimes.
In sad news, so sad. I'm just shedding tears over here.
Oh no.
The Steel City Blues, the fabulous coach Arthur Smith, has finally ended his love affair with Cordarelle Patterson, at least for right now, who they have sent packing from Pittsburgh after he dragged him around everywhere he could possibly drag him around to. So, let's remember the good times, like him taking carries away from Bijan Robinson and
oh man.
I mean, like, if it wasn't Algier, like, they'd be like, oh, good, Algier's not in the backfield. And they'd give it to Cordarelle Patterson. And you'd be like, what, are you kidding me?
You see number 84 trot out and number 7 trot off the field, and it's like, what are we doing?
Yeah,
but
you're like, what world is this? I do remember when Cordarelle broke into the league and was primarily just a kick returner.
Yeah.
And he had some burners, man. He had some really, really great kick returns that were just, kind of left your jaw on the floor, like almost Hester-like.
Yeah.
And
he was special.
And he must be a hard worker and a good dude, because everywhere he goes, they're willing to expand his role. Like, he gets a little older and they're like, we'll give you more to do.
Yeah. Yeah. He's so versatile. And you said it, there's not a lot of players who would be like, yeah, okay, I'll do this. Now I'll carry the ball 15 times a game out of nowhere and put together in 21, his like 1,300 or 1,100, 1,200, whatever it was, all-purpose yards in Atlanta that came out of absolutely nowhere. It's like, oh, okay, he's just going to have 150 carries now. I guess that's what he is. But he's
like, but I'm a converted kick returner wide receiver. And they're like, well, now you're a converted kick returner wide receiver running back.
Yeah, you're no longer a wide receiver who occasionally runs.
I'm surprised he wasn't lining up under center.
Oh, man. I'm sure Arthur Smith tried it in practice a couple times, and they were like, okay, let's dial that back. Let's dial that a wildcat or something like that. But, man, he's just such a versatile guy, and it's been such a fun like late career sort of ascension that we've seen, right? Because it did really happen in 21 where he became that. I mean, he was a waiver wire guy that year that it was like, okay, this is the week he kind of falls off. Okay, this is the week that, his role goes whatever happens. And it just never happened. He was awesome all year. I think he was like consistently an RB2 that year, which is just absurd because of the usage. And then you look at it and you're like, how in the world does Arthur Smith have the personnel equity that this guy has? Like, this is a guy who can go from job to job and just be like, oh, Jonnu Smith and Cordarelle Patterson are coming with me.
They're coming with me.
Right. Everywhere he goes. And it's like, what has this guy done to earn that amount of pull with the personnel, right? And
I don't know, because you just look at him and you want to punch him in the face. You know what I mean?
I think that stems from the Bijan Robinson rookie year stuff, man. That was almost malpractice. It's like, what are we doing here? This was the 7th overall pick, and he's losing run to, I think he had 45% of the Falcons rushing attempts that year.
That's ridiculous. And nobody was
insane.
Nobody was more ready to crash this league than him.
Yeah, it's just unreal. But whatever he did, he has earned enough equity to name his terms and construct his personnel. So
I wonder if he's in ownership meetings like, look, if you hire me, I'll get you Jonnu Smith and Cordarelle Patterson. And they were like, all right. We can use
I don't
them.
know.
Could we use them?
Yeah. For some reason, those guys are just too enticing to pass up. The Jonnu trade, I don't know, man. I loved that fit in Miami. That was a bummer. I wanted to see one more year in Miami for Jonnu, but such is life, I guess, with Arthur Smith. He's fantasy Siberia.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with them in Pittsburgh because – neither one of those guys are really amazing blockers. It'd be one thing if one of them was really good blocking and you held him back a lot more and let the other one run routes. But neither one of them is really a tremendous blocker by any stretch of the imagination. So, my first inkling is that Jonnu Smith is going to get all the run because of Arthur Smith.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I mean? And I was seeing reports that they're even running 13 personnel at practice, and they're spreading out Jonnu wide, and it is crazy because you look at DK and then it's like, okay, Calvin Austin, and then it's Roman Wilson and Robert Woods, and it's like, okay, they really could utilize Jonnu as like their wide receiver too in this wild 13 personnel package. I don't know, but
I still think they'll go out and sign. Well, they won't sign Keenan Allen because he's going to go somewhere where he thinks he can win.
Right.
But they might be desperate enough to get a cooked Amari Cooper in there.
Yeah, that could happen. And if Keenan Allen decides, hey, I'll accept 9-8 with a potential first-round playoff exit, there's no better spot than Pittsburgh. So
right, yeah, that's exactly right.
That's what's guaranteed.
Both what you aspire to and what is realistic.
There you go.
All right, let's keep it in the AFC North. And since I just mentioned Hendrickson a minute ago, it seems only proper on a fantasy show that we talk about some offense. For those who aren't familiar, the Bengals have some offense. Joe Burrow has been said. Zach Taylor has said in several press conferences that he's not taking it easy on Joe Burrow this year. They've just been handling with his kids' gloves. Excuse me. Handling him with kids' gloves for several years now, and not making him take any hitting reps in practice, not letting him play any preseason games at all. Maybe he comes out and plays like one series in the fourth preseason game. I mean, not even a quarter, just a series. And they said, no, this year he's going to play more in the preseason. Now, more could just mean a quarter and a half. You know what I mean? But the idea is that the Bengals will actually hit the ground running for once instead of being behind the eight ball from the jump, which they have been for his entire career. I believe they're 2-12, could be 2-11, 2-13, something along those lines. But and that's since Joe Burrow got there. I mean, that's weeks 1 and 2. Of all the seasons combined, they've won twice in the first 2 weeks. So that's not very good.
No. And when you miss the playoffs by a game, man, that's your wake-up call, I guess.
Right. Well, and the fact that, especially when you see the way that they can play, to even get to that point, when you run off 6 wins in a row to end the season over playoff level competition, and fall short, and you're like, dude, why couldn't you do this in September, and give yourself a little bit of a cushion? But my real question for you is, do you think that's the way to solve this problem, or do you think the defense is going to rear its ugly head as well? Or
it certainly can't hurt, right? The fact that they've acknowledged it, and the fact that they are like, we have to do something differently, even if this isn't like going to yield tangible results, right? Maybe they don't go undefeated in September because Joe Burrow played one more preseason game. But for me, it's the fact that, like, okay, they're not just going to like arrogantly ignore the fact that they are really bad to start years or to start seasons. And they may or may not have cost me my survivor pool in week 1 last year. And I'm not bitter about it. I'm not bitter about it, I promise. But it's like, oh man, it was being eliminated from a survivor pool in week 1 is like as low as it gets. And I have the Bengals to thank for that. But it's one of those things where, for me, just try something, acknowledge that this is something that has plagued you. And maybe, like I said, maybe it was the crushing defeat. I remember there being a video circulating of like some Bengals players getting together to watch the Broncos Chiefs game, where it was like, if the Chiefs win, the Bengals are in, and the Chiefs just sat all their starters, and
they laid down.
Yeah, and the video, like, you see them,
and
all
the Broncos
excited,
weren't even playing their starters, and they just rolled them.
And then that video that came out was like, they're all excited, and then the game kicks off, and they're all just like, all right, I guess start planning vacations. But it's one of those things, man, where it's like, if you even go 500, go 2-2 to start the year, you just can't go like 1-3, 1-4 to start the year. Come out a little faster, because you're right. The engine hums down the stretch every year. They're ready to go, but you also can't put yourself in a hole so deep that you can't dig yourself out of it, and then it doesn't matter when the engine's humming, right? I think the offense is so productive that it is going. The defense is probably still going to be a bit of an issue, right? I don't think they're going to turn some huge corner, but this offense is one of the most lethal in the NFL. Like, they're just absurdly good, and if they played at a more consistent level, throughout the year, right? It didn't go like this. It was more like just slowly ticking up. This is a team that can make noise. I do think that. I don't know how far because the defense does hamstring them a little bit, but certainly a playoff team.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the year they went to the Super Bowl out here and played the Rams, um, they, that was a thing. I mean, they're just banging on all cylinders, but the defense was at least a little above average. You know what I mean? They were still not amazing, but they were a little above average. The problem that year was the offensive line was so bad.
Yeah.
And yet we still made it to the Super Bowl and scored a ton of points on the way there. And now they're finally fixing the offensive line. There's still one or two guys that are kind of I think the defense has got to maybe, I don't know, just at least have a little more pride or something, because somebody is not working hard or somebody is not leading that defense, which is why I was really sorry to see Mike Hilton go to Miami, if for no other reason than the fact that he was such a vocal leader. But
that can elevate a group too. You look at referencing the Eagles, I got to find a way to get them involved, but referencing the Eagles a little bit, you look at, CJ Gardner-Johnson is a guy who was such a vocal leader, and that defense just completely turned a corner. I don't want to say it was solely because of him or anything like that, but you look at he leaves for 23, they bring him back, and then that defense has an edge again, right? And they have a little more pride. It could be as simple as finding a guy like that elevates you just a little bit, right? In those big moments where it's like, make a play, come up with one stop, and you have the edge and you have the guys that are going to go out and make that happen. Because sometimes it really does come down to that late in games when, everybody's exhausted. It's like dig a little deeper, find one more play. And those teams that have that guy tend to make it happen more often than not. So It could just be with an offense this good, it could just be a couple of stops a game. You don't have to have a top.
It really
defense.
is.
Yeah, you don't have to have a top 10 defense. Just get a couple of stops and let the offense pick it up from there.
Come up big on third down like 2 or 3 times this game.
Exactly.
I also want to mention in Cincinnati, after a pretty miserable season last year, Jermaine Burton, who came into the league just absolutely loaded with talent, but with some character issues. He was reportedly a little bit lazy, and he was not in Cincinnati very long before people were snapping photos of him sitting by himself at a slot machine at the casino. He was oversleeping or falling asleep during his meetings. He missed one meeting and they didn't even take him to the last game of the season. Finished the season with 4 catches for 107 yards, although he did excel in the second half of the season, returning kicks, and looked good doing it. Looked like he is a good athlete. So Cincinnati is actually coming out and saying, and a bunch of coaches are saying it, that they couldn't ask for anything more from him so far this year. He's on time. He's running all the reps. He knows the playbook, which last year was another problem. Didn't know the playbook at all. So I'm glad to see that he's got his head on straight, because that's physicality you can't replace. And he is far more physical than like Andre Iosivas, as good as he is, and stuff like that. But, Higgins is injured a lot. And Iosivas has shown that he doesn't play the Higgins role as well as he does the slot. So they're really looking for somebody to be that outside guy. I mean, last year it was Mike Gesicki of all people. When Higgins was out, Gesicki just lit it up. So anyway, I think it's going to be interesting to see if Burton ends up being, worthy of a flyer. I think people have him still in dynasty leagues. In redraft, the benches are too short, but I wouldn't be surprised if Higgins gets hurt and there's a race to the waiver wire for somebody like that. And they'll bring him in for a couple bombs prior to that happening. But you have any feelings on that?
I just think in a passing offense like this one, an offense that throws the ball as often as they do, any sort of meaningful role in that system, in that whole approach is one you have to consider. You said it. If somebody goes down, that's probably the fastest way, especially if it's Higgins. It always seems to be Higgins at some point. But if that happens, he's definitely an interesting guy, especially if he's turned the corner, because it does seem like Iosivas plays that slot role. And then you talked about Gesicki as well. It seems like everybody, I would assume they would rather have Burton out wide than Gesicki if he proves he's ready to handle that.
Even if he's just there to take the top off the defense.
Right.
I mean, not that Jamar can't do that, but Jamar lines up on this a lot. There's a lot of crossing patterns as well. So,
right, and that's the thing right there is like if that's the role that he plays in an offense that with the passing volume that the Bengals support year in and year out, that could be a valuable role if he sees a game where he's playing meaningful snaps, right? Especially in like, a spike scenario where you need a spot start, a fill-in type guy. It'll probably be more of a, like you said, rush to the waiver wire if somebody's hurt. But it is interesting because of the offense he plays in, right? I think that's the deciding factor for me is the pass rates are probably going to be astronomically high again because they tend to be with, Joe Burrow and the receivers that this team employs. But Burton could certainly be an intriguing option if somebody were to go down, given where he plays.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. And I think it's important for him to be there, with the possibility that Higgins misses games and knock on wood, but everybody gets injured at some point. And to think that Jamar Chase will go through his whole career and not be injured is unrealistic. I'm not saying anything outlandish here. But I will say that if we don't have that extra person like Burton to go with Iosivas and Higgins, then, all of a sudden that high-powered offense could be in real trouble without Jamar Chase pulling as many eyes as he does.
Definitely. I'm with you on that. It's an interesting he's an interesting option if sort of forced into that expanded opportunity at some point. And it seems like, earning the trust back is a great place to start, right? So at the very least, a good story, a guy who seems to be turning it around after it was a huge issue last year.
Yeah. And he had to earn the trust back from Burrow too. There were so many practices that he was running wrong routes, and Joe will not stand for it, man. Yeah. He is like, what are you doing? You're in the wrong place, getting in guys' faces. So everybody thinks he's pretty cool, calm, and collected, but when he gets fired up, he gets really fired up.
Yeah.
Let's go back to New Orleans. I like it so much on Bourbon Street. I figured we should go down there. And one of my guilty pleasure favorite players in the NFL right now, for no other reason, because I never see him play, is Kendre Miller. And he came out and said that he feels normal for the first time since he's been in the pros, and he's been injured often and then was not favored by the previous coaching staff at all. I mean, they threw him under the bus every chance they could get. He's been on and off the IR pretty consistently. So if he's normal, we know he's talented. And we know this is a new coaching regime. Does he take over? Well, I guess it's not take over because it's empty right now, but does he assume that number 2 role, and can he be the guy if Kamara goes down? Or are we looking at, a rookie like Devin Neal could leapfrog him?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it as a training camp battle, and I think both guys are extremely talented, and obviously the Saints do too, right? And it's a bummer. We're looking at Kendre. We were just talking earlier about Marshawn Lloyd too, and it's such a bummer what's happening with him. At least Kendre Miller has a chance to he said he feels normal. That's a good start. It's always good to feel normal.
Don't get hurt.
Yeah, exactly. Now stay feeling normal. But now he's got competition, right? Devin Neal was a guy that they just brought in to potentially push for that job. I will say Alvin Kamara is getting older. He hasn't always been the most efficient runner, right? It's a lot has been receiving volume for Kamara, and he's been known as the guy that sees a ton of touches and puts up a ton of numbers. But it could be a situation where later in his career, keeping him upright is most important for the role that he's going to play. And you see teams mix players in. I mean, Kellen Moore's last team, the Eagles, right? There were a lot of situations where you saw Kenny Gainwell trotting off the sideline to come in and spell Saquon Barkley for a couple snaps, right? And that's Saquon Barkley. You have to keep your guys on the field. And I think we're seeing the NFL shift a little bit in their understanding that, okay, we can't run these guys into the ground, especially when they're a little older. So when you see if one of these two guys, whether it be Kendre Miller or Devin Neal, really leaves no doubt that they're the second best option in this backfield, that could equate to some meaningful snaps, especially, even with Alvin Kamara in the mix, because it's important to give guys a little bit of a spell to keep them upright for as long as possible, right?
Yeah, I agree. And, I even put on the paper that Devin Neal he took a tumble in the draft, and it was primarily because his combine performance was not good. I don't have many of the numbers in front of me, but, he wasn't a burner on the 40. He didn't do that well in most of the immeasurables. But this is a guy that ran for 2,500 yards his last 2 years of college, and well over 4,000 yards for the 4 years. He was a 4-year starter at Kansas. He had 32 touchdowns his last 2 seasons. So there's something to be said for just knowing your way around, having experienced success, where even though your measurables at the combine might not look, as awesome on paper as some of the other guys, you're like, but this dude is highly productive. Like every time they gave him, he averaged 5.7 yards a carry in his career in college. That's absurd.
Yeah.
That's seriously small school stuff. And Kansas is not in the greatest conference, but they still play some pretty good competition.
Yeah, and I think this could be a unique situation in that the running back who spells Kamara projects as more of that early down type of player, right? And you look at, okay, who who can you run on early downs, on obvious running downs that can pick up tough yardage, that can make the most of those carries, right? Maybe it's a short yardage type of guy, whatever the case may be. And then you look at Devin Neal, who had 3.7 yards after contact per attempt last season at Kansas and rushed for 16 touchdowns, right? And had a game against Colorado where he had 37 carries, West Virginia 27 carries. He's a guy that they really leaned on, who can be a player that maybe comes in and spells on early downs so that Kamara can be really effective as that receiving specialist. And still, obviously, Kamara is going to lead this backfield. That's not the up for debate so much. It's more so, how are these other guys, the Devin Neals and the Kendre Millers, going to come in and play a role? And I think it's whoever projects more favorably between the two as that early down, short yardage, physical type of guy, because that's kind of where I think Kamara might cede a little bit of work as he gets further along in his career.
I feel like that's more a Miller thing, but I could be mistaken. Jamie had a good question here, and I think it's already been talked about quite a bit this offseason, is if the Saints are really as bad as we think they're going to be, will they try, and will they have any takers to move Kendre at the trade deadline, or move Kamara at the trade deadline?
Yeah, I think he just turned 30, right, on July 25th. Happy belated birthday.
Right.
But I think the big thing there is I'm trying to find the contract, but so often it comes down to the money and how do these teams work the money out and the terms out with contracts and different things like that. Because is a team going to be connected to a guy? And I'm trying to find the contract because that'll help a little bit.
Yeah, I was actually looking for it as well.
Yeah, so it looks like he signed an extension. It's up in 26. So he's an unrestricted free agent in 30 and 27. So he would be under contract if they traded him. There is a potential out after 25, though. There's a ton of dead cap. But he's got an $11 million base salary in 26, which he's got an $18 million cap hit. It could be tough to trade him with those numbers, right?
Yeah, it just depends on how desperately somebody needs him, because then all of a sudden 11 million is pretty doable.
Right.
It's not ideal, but I don't know.
On a short-term deal, it makes a little more sense. So yeah, I get what you're saying on that.
I tend to think if somebody comes knocking that lost their running back, he'll get moved pretty quickly. But as far as anybody just adding him to an established backfield, I don't know. It's hard to believe somebody's going to take on that water.
I'm with you. I think it would be a situation where an injury created desperation,
right,
or something like that. And then even at that point, I think the Saints would still have to take on some of that money. And I don't know how much a team is even really giving up for the Saints to make that worth it, right?
Right.
I couldn't necessarily see it happening. I think Kamara's going to be there. I just don't think the value works out for a team taking on that money. And it doesn't really work out for the Saints either, who are probably going to have to eat a considerable amount of it, because this is a guy with an $11 million. It'll probably be restructured, but an $11 million base salary at 31 years old in 2026. So that's a tough.
And you're not going to pay $11 million for a pass catcher out of the backfield.
Right.
He would have to be the main attraction that you believe can still be the main attraction, at least for the remainder of the season. And then maybe to start the next season, if you had a guy go down with a ACL, or you got a rookie that's working his way back, or something like that. but yeah, the other obvious problem is it's not baseball, it's football. And bigger name players, it is so hard for people to get on the same page as to value of players to make a deal like this happen. You see it all the time with like linemen and probably wide receivers a little more, at least the second rung of wide receivers, because they're so bountiful. There's so many of them. You know what I mean? But other than that, big name players, it's just, well, we think he's worth this much. Oh God, you're crazy. He's not worth that. And then the talks are done.
Yeah, and he's kind of like one of the faces of that franchise too. You wonder like how much of that does that play a role? And you mentioned baseball. It's not like these teams can trade for prospects. You know what I'm saying? This is a here and now game. So it's just such an interesting, like when you talk about values, and would the Saints even retain value for trading Kamara? It might be a situation where they're like, we have to get off of this money. We have to attach a pick, right? The value might just be so far apart. Right. Like you said, they might view him as a completely different player that an outside franchise would. So I don't necessarily see it happening.
I think if they were to get a deal done, it would be because the team buying was willing to take on probably 3/4 of his contract and give them like a 4th rounder.
Yeah.
And people would be like, wow, that's a great deal for Kamara. And yeah, I mean, I guess it would be if you needed a running back that badly.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm with you. It would probably have to be some like agreement on the money with a conditional pick attached for like snaps played or something like that. It would have to be creative. And if that at that point, it's like he's been one of the foundations of your franchise. Things might not.
And he's the last bastion that a lot of those fans are holding on to.
Right. And it's, it's good we talked about it with Courtland Sutton. Like it's good to do right by your guys.
Right.
And this isn't a deal where, he's got 4 years left on it. It's a deal where, maybe he asks for his release after 26 or whatever. Right. But I think he'll be in here with New Orleans for the extent of this season. And then we'll see, but I don't necessarily see it happening.
Yeah, Kamara strikes me as the kind of guy that would walk away instead of hanging on. But I don't know him personally or anything. But if I did, I probably wouldn't be sitting here.
Yeah, but I agree with you. He seems like the type of guy where it's like he wants to play if he's at his
very
best,
down
right?
to earth. He recognizes how the business works. He's talked about it innumerable times. So, I could almost see him, doing the whole farewell speech in the off season and saying, I'm not coming back. That's it. That's all she wrote.
Yeah. The Marshawn Lynch posts the cleats on the telephone wire with the
right.
peace emoji, something like that.
Yeah. I can dig it. All right. Well, we're getting kind of up against it. We got a few minutes left, though. I was thinking, since so much of the stuff is draft stuff, I don't know how many drafts you've done, if you've been in any best balls lately or anything like that. Obviously, you've seen rankings. Is there anybody that you've seen that's being drafted way too low, or that they should be off the board by the time they get to where their ADP is, or anybody that's being drafted like people are putting way too much faith in them?
Yeah, I think one guy and this is a deeper guy, or you know what? I'm looking at one guy right now. We'll go with him. I like Deandre Swift a lot. He's actually my RB16 ADP right now has him at 24. So I'm like considerably higher on him. I think that Ben Johnson and the Bears, brass, Ryan Poles, all of the decision makers had every opportunity to go out and replace DeAndre Swift, right? And instead of doing that, they drafted Kyle Monangai in the 7th round. And now there is a very clear pecking order for Swift is probably the early down lead guy. Roschon will probably have a role, and then Monangai could carve something out. But this is a situation where Ben Johnson has worked with DeAndre Swift before, and he was a pretty productive two-way back as a runner and a receiver early in his career. And he dealt with injuries and things like that. And then he was ultimately traded. And I think a lot of people will point to like, oh, but he traded him. He didn't want him. And there could be any number of factors that played a role there with finances.
I mean, it can be as simple as like, the contract was about to be up. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. And that plays a role all the time. It might not necessarily be he didn't like him. He sucked. He was this, he was that. And DeAndre Swift has just quietly been over the last 2 seasons in that RB2 conversation week after week, right? And he's been productive there. And I tend to think in this offense, and those were in offenses like the Eagles in 23 were a train wreck. The Bears in 24, they were a train wreck. And DeAndre Swift was still productive in these systems. He was consistently around that RB2 flex threshold with an offensive line that had Caleb Williams running for his life, an offensive line that's been largely retooled over the course of this season, right, and an offensive scheme that I think is, and it might take some time to get up to speed. There's a ton of pieces here, but one of the solidified roles that I see when I look at this offense is, okay, DeAndre Swift is going to be the lead back. And I think that's a very valuable role in a Ben Johnson offense. Do I think he's going to be like a bell cow? I don't know if I'd go that far, but I think he's going to very clearly lead this team in percentage of carries and even receptions out of the backfield. I think he's going to be really productive there too. We might look at the efficiency metrics over the last couple of years. I think context is really important. I think the Eagles, while they do have a great offensive line, and they did in 23, DeAndre Swift rushed for 1,000 yards with them, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a situation where I think he's being perennially underrated, and this might be the best situation that he's had to play in. And he's a guy that, I mean, I'm way higher than ADP on. So I tend to have a lot of DeAndre Swift when I do draft, and I'm okay with that. I think if he loses this role, it happens later in the season. It would have to be somebody else coming on or him really underperforming for Ben Johnson to move in a different situation or move in a different direction, I should say. So this is DeAndre Swift's year for this backfield. And if they need to go in a different direction, I think it happens after this season. But
yeah,
that's a guy I'm really high on.
I got you. So you're not buying into everybody thinking Ben Johnson is going to try to turn he and Roschon into the Montgomery Gibbs situation.
I think those are two very special players. I don't necessarily know right now if Roschon has shown enough to warrant that big of a role. Maybe he does, but even then, Jahmyr Gibbs was an insane. If we're assuming that Swift takes on the Gibbs role, right, and Johnson plays that David Montgomery role, I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs and Swift isn't Gibbs, obviously, but that was an insanely productive role, even in limited usage in this offense, right? And it takes a special
you probably outdo your ranking of him.
100%. If he plays that role, he's probably pushing. I mean, Gibbs is going to be in another stratosphere. He that role was tailor-made for him, but I think Swift in that role could push for consistently RB1 production if that's the split. And if we're looking at Swift isn't Gibbs, I don't think Johnson is Montgomery. So we might see a more watered down version
Yeah,
unless Johnson proves to be that guy, which I don't know, he could, right? Like he's kind of proven to be a reserve sort of like change up sort of back, but maybe he
he
takes a
could
step
prove
forward.
to be that guy, but he hasn't yet. So
Exactly.
you
So
know,
that's the thing where like
he hasn't forced anybody's hand.
100%. That's a great way of putting it. And I think if that's the direction that they go in, I don't know if it's going to be like a 1-for-1 carbon copy sort of thing, but if that's the direction they go in and Swift is splitting time with Johnson, I think his pass catching chops and his ability as, you know, an elusive runner, I think it's a watered down version of what Gibbs gave you in the same role, which is far more valuable to me than, you know, the 24th running back off the board.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good point. For me, I was going to bring up some quarterbacks because I think people are a lot of mistiering the QBs. When I see how late like Dak Prescott's going in some of these redrafts, and I'm like, dude.
Yeah.
And same with Trevor Lawrence. I'm surprised people are more apt to believe in Trevor Lawrence this year. You know, after the emergence of BTJ and the drafting of Hunter, but still, he's still so far down there. So, if you're one of those people that waits to draft a quarterback, man, you're going to come out with somebody pretty good. But
Yeah.
But that's not what I really wanted to bring up. What I wanted to do was an overdrafted player, and ironically enough, I'm going to take one of Dak's receivers, and that is George Pickens. George Pickens, first of all, I have always disliked him. So anybody that knows me that's watching this is probably just like, oh, here we go again.
Is that the Bengals fan in you?
Yes, but it's also the football fan in me.
Yeah.
George Pickens has never been he hasn't been the alpha. He hasn't even been the alpha when they tried to make him the alpha. He just couldn't do it. So you would think that he's going into a situation now that is more appropriate. Because you got CeeDee Lamb is the alpha dog there. But until I see George Pickens be more than a best ball receiver, I'm not putting him on a roster week in and week out. He's got too many of those days where he has 170 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then the next week has like 2 catches for -2 yards. And I'm like, that's not there's no consistency there. And you can't expect to win a championship playing boom and bust. And I'm not saying that he can't turn it around. I'm not saying that Dallas probably isn't an ideal situation for him to turn that around. But until I see it, I'm not drafting him anywhere near where he's going.
Yeah, I just noticed his ADP is in the late 20s now, which would put him in high-end flex territory. I think it's really high. I think the big question for me with Dallas is if you go back and you look at Brian Schottenheimer's most recent offense where he's running the offense, because we know obviously he's been in Dallas, but we know those were Mike McCarthy offenses. McCarthy was the play caller, that sort of thing. So if you go back to his Seattle offenses, the run rate over expected numbers in those 3 seasons, he averaged -2% pass rate over expected. He averaged -2% in pass rate over expected. And the number was way higher in 2020. He did trend toward throwing the ball a little more. So you look at that as like, okay, maybe personnel dictates it. Maybe when you look at Dallas, you look at a situation where the personnel is going to dictate passing. But I also think that the running back depth, they don't have a guy that you're going to look at as like, oh, this is the lead guy. Javonte Williams is going to take 55 to 60% of the carries from this backfield.
Right.
But I do think they have a lot of guys that have been leaned on as volume backs, and that's why they weren't overly efficient. But I think you will see a sort of committee approach where this team runs way more than people expect because of what Brian Schottenheimer has done, right? He wants to play a balanced game. And I don't necessarily think the personnel will force his hand as much as we think. I think Dak being as low as he is a testament to the depth at quarterback this year. I mean, you were talking about Trevor Lawrence. He's a guy that I'm excited about, and he's still my QB like 19 because of the guys ahead of him. Or he's 18, I'm sorry. But there's so much depth at quarterback. And I think there is a little bit of like people are expecting the Dak where the Mike McCarthy Dak, where he's, this is like a 55, 60% pass rate. I think, or maybe closer to 60s. I think this is going to be a little more balanced than maybe we expect. And the running back room is going to be like sort of an all hands on deck approach where all of these guys are chipping in. And that for that reason, I'm totally with you on George Pickens, because I don't think an offense that is that predicated on being balanced can support. It has in the past, but this iteration of the offense,
volume that he needs to be, what I'm saying he needs to be.
100%. And you still have Jake Ferguson around. There's the shot play guys with Tolbert. And there's somebody else I completely blanked on. But, I mean, they brought Pickens in. He's going to play a role, right? Maybe a bit of a field stretcher, that sort of thing. But to draft him in high-end flex range, even value him as a wide receiver 2 is a little rich for my blood with
in
the offense.
In the 20s is preposterous. Like I have a hard time even wrapping my head around it. But it's really weird. He's also one of those guys where I think he's one of those dudes that has so many non-Steeler fans that just like him, and they're like, he's super acrobatic, man, he can catch anything, and they just like him, and they just push his ADP up little by little. I feel like it's like every season it's the same thing.
Yeah, his ADP right now is at 29. I am way lower on him too, actually. I have him at 41, and that felt low. So I even went through and I was like, okay, there's got to be somebody. And I'm like, I would rather have everybody ahead of him than him this year. And I think it's the profile. You hit on the profile that we've seen from Pickens over the course of his career, that shot play, field stretching type of guy who can make the contested catches and do all of that. The volume is what scares me a little bit with Brian Schottenheimer calling the offense. He could deviate it from the balance a little bit because of personnel. I hadn't Jake really Ferguson.
I hadn't really thought about the balance attack factor that he brings to it. That's a great point.
Yeah, it's something I'm nervous about. Dak and the Cowboys in general, outside of CD, I'm still really big on CD. Any passing attack, any iteration of passing that Dallas runs is going to run through him. But I'm nervous about all of those guys because I just don't know if Schottenheimer is going to deviate from some of the balance that he's really, really tried to instill on these teams. Maybe in his mind, the personnel isn't what we all think it is, and he's not going to deviate from it. So that's just my one hesitation.
Yeah, or if they get in there and the itchy trigger finger says like Javante's not getting it done, you're up, Miles Sanders.
Right.
Miles isn't getting it done, you're up, Jaden. Jaden's not getting it done, you're up, Coffee Table, whatever that guy's name is. That's like 2 feet tall.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Deuce Vaughn. There he is.
Yeah, Deuce Vaughn.
Yeah.
He's like,
Phil Maffa.
Deuce Vaughn is like a great place to put your beer.
Right on top of the helmet.
Right.
Yeah. But Phil Maffa is another guy that they've been pretty high on him as far as
I love
coming
his
out of
tape.
training camp.
I love his tape, and he could be the guy. I don't know if he could be the guy right from the jump, but he could work his way into a pretty heavy role, I think, if given the right opportunity.
For sure.
But,
I think there's some depth there, and it's an interesting offense to watch because I think it's going to make or break a lot of teams with the way that people are valuing Dallas this year. So,
yeah. All right. Well, we're right up against it. So thanks for coming on, Colton. Why don't you tell everybody again where they can find you?
For sure. Well, thank you so much for having me, man. I had a blast. I had a blast last time too. Whenever you guys want me on, you just let me know. I'll make it happen.
Awesome.
But as far as where you can find me, I write for footballguys.com. So you'll find my work over there. I've got a Jameson Williams player profile coming out probably this week that I spent a lot of time on, just a deep dive on him. So be on the lookout for that. And then I release episodes of my show, Scramble Drill with Colton Dodgson, every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday on YouTube. The YouTube channel is the same name, and then wherever you get your podcast. So check that out as well. I would greatly appreciate it.
Awesome. And they can find you on the tweet machine at what?
Yes, at FFC Dodd. If you want to follow me over there, that would be awesome.
At
pretty
FFC
active.
Dodd.
Yes, FFC DOD.
And obviously, you guys already know me. Please, if you're still here watching, or if you're watching later, do all the YouTube stuff. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, throw some comments down. Let us know that we sucked, or let us know that we were great. And any of those things helps our algorithm overall and gets more eyes on the show. So thanks again, Colton. I'll say goodnight to Amber Heard. Have a good one, guys. Try not to try not to cause any trouble out there.